I really wish the people that look sort of with anger at the weirdos, at the happenings, at the psychedelic freakout, would, instead of just looking with anger, just look with nothing and with no feeling, you know, be unbiased about it. Because they really don't realize that what these people are talking about is something that they really want themselves. It's something that everyone wants. You know, it's personal freedom to be able to talk and be able to say things. And it's dead straight. It's a real sort of basic pleasure for everyone. But it looks weird from the outside.
It's true!
This is a happening, an improvised game of chance meetings and chance events. Part demonstration, part performance, part sales promotion for the Underground's own newspaper, the International Times, and part just plain exuberance. It's an expression characteristic of London's other underground.
It's a revolution of youth against the old values of society. It's not a political revolution in the sense that there's no actual party to support.
We're like Marx and we're like Kraust too, you know.
I think if people feel that what we're doing is disrupting their order, then what we're doing is anarchy.
Happening is a playing gesture, and playing gesture just because you like to play, because you like to make games, maybe of a less artistic form.
A lot of people who come into the scene from outside, the London scene that is, have had a little difficulty assimilating how sweet everything is.
We're not trying to necessarily, provoke the police as such, or to provoke anybody as such. I mean, if we had our way, we would just like to sort of sit around with each other and have a good time.
Do you mind taking that thing right away? The London scene as such, the subject of this film, as I understand it, really began, if you want to put a date on it, in May 1965. An organization, a very loosely organized organization called the Poets Co-op, organized an international poetry reading, conference, seminar, what have you, in the Albert Hall. And with almost no organization, no publicity, complete chaos surrounding it, managed to cram the Albert Hall, which holds, I think, something like 7,500 people, full of young, enthusiastic sincere poetry enthusiasts who heard some of the top young poets living today from all over the world, Dutch poets Simon Vicanu, Americans Ginsberg and Corso and Ferlinghetti, the young English poets, and it was quite an occasion. And I think that will probably be, if any historian ever puts a date on the scene, that will probably be the first date.
Yes, and I am waiting for my case to come up. And I'm waiting for Voznesensky to turn on with us and speak love tonight. And I'm waiting for Aphrodite to grow live arms at a final disarmament conference. And I'm waiting for our iron comrades to attend in a new rebirth of wonder.
Lippen, eo, puh. Napoleon, over for now the vomit, invisible skull, the fear of bones, the grasp against man and woman and babe. From this single birth reborn that I am to be, so my own identity now nameless, neither man nor poet nor dragon nor god, but the dreaming me under physical stars with tender red moons in my belly, and the sun, my visible father, making my body visible through my own eyes.
The one thing interesting about that scene was that that particular poetry conference was the fact that it was completely publicized, almost in the main by posters, bill posters stuck up all over London. And that was the major form of communication, of telling people about jazz concerts, about poetry readings, about anything in the underground arts world. The International Times newspaper was an attempt to systemize a little bit the whole kind of underground communication system around the world. That's why, to a certain extent, we have the name International, because we are selling the paper in San Francisco, in New York, Amsterdam, Berlin, Buenos Aires, you name it. Anywhere that there are young people who are interested in contemporary ideas, in poetry, music, theater, politics, what have you.
We started by coming together, a group of people, some in the theatre, some in mixed media, myself in journalism. We came together and decided that it had to start because the mood of the times had changed. Something was happening in London. We wanted to try and locate it.
Well, the International Times fits into the underground scene by being a communications medium. All the other scenes, you look around and you see they have their communications media. We don't have a radio station or a television station. We just have a newspaper.
We get our information from people who have never had an outlet before. Say they have a new underground project going. They want to stage a procession. They're only too glad to contact the newspaper, and we're only too glad to print it. Our readers know we're dealing in this kind of information, and so they buy it.
One of the whole points of the movement we're involved in is that there are so many different kinds of people getting together under what they're coming to realize is a common bond. I mean, people who are politically oriented, people who are completely apolitical, but who have interest in completely different fields like mixed media, rock and roll, anything like that, who 5 years ago would not be found dead on the same street corner, are now coming together, and feel that they're part of something that has a common bond.
If we get to the stage where we're less underground and we don't need our own information sheet, then we can devote our energies to doing something else. Personally, I think we should have a radio station. As soon as the opportunity comes, they'll start. Obviously, we want to get at people throughout the night. We want to tell them all the time, on the moment.
Another more tangible plan afoot is to stage several issues of the newspaper in a theater. One idea I had was putting the editor in a barrel with only his head showing to read his editorial, because that's the way he feels when he writes an editorial, perhaps. Well, let's say it was the way he feels when he writes an editorial. He feels very contained and can't really say what he wants to say. Well, if we put him on stage, I mean, this might be something that people could see because it's behind the words. I think one of the things that's happening is that, and if a newspaper finally disappears, and there's no reason for it, it will be because words have become obsolete. Another way that that this is beginning to manifest itself is in the importance of posters. This is something that's happening in China now. I mean, there's nothing but posters in terms of communication in China.
It can't happen here. It can't happen here. I'm telling you, my dear, that it can happen here. Because I've been checking it out, baby. I checked it out a couple of times. And I'm telling you, it can't happen here. Oh, darling, it's important that you believe me. Bop, 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 bop.
Yep. Good. Let me have a close-up.
A modern version of the It Girl, the International Times girl. Indica bookshop, where she's being photographed, is one of the headquarters of the group of people who've come to be known as the Underground. It's a stylish, airy room, crammed with books, the records of groups like the Grateful Dead, the Fugs, and the Mothers of Invention, and a mass of small circulation periodicals from all over the world. In a sense, it's an ordinary retail bookshop serving a specialized community. But as well as being a bookshop, it's also an information center, meeting place, and post office for the underground. It's an environment for the young to meet, talk, and simply observe each other in. And it's one of the places to which the poets and provos of other countries automatically head when they arrive in this country.
Yes? Fine. This way? Yep. Just move into it and twirl it. Yep, fine. Right, stop.
The paper and Indica are related in that I'm a director of both, and the aims and ideals of the shop and the paper are more or less the same. Well, the bookshop is the centre, the collecting point of information and the disposing point of information. It's the communications centre. But the scenes themselves are connected by the paper as an agency. There are a lot of scenes all over London, all over Europe. This is a completely internal scene, so to speak. The whole system is here. We have our own publishers, our own filmmakers, our own theatres, nightclubs. It's a complete society.
Indica is naturally the first place to which it arrives after it's come off the presses. After all, the editorial offices are downstairs. For many of the people who buy it there, it simply provides a handy what's-on of all underground activities in London and elsewhere. That's certainly one of the functions it's designed to fulfill. For the rest, it's an odd mixture of the sort of aggressive, crusading journalism characteristic of the British press 50 years ago and something more modern, a frank, chatty attitude to drugs and the underground in general, which to many people would seem brazenly uncritical and irresponsible. The people who work for the paper, writing for it, editing it and packing it off to subscribers all over the world, as well as free to anyone in prison, draw what money they can. For the most part, it's little enough. When the paper itself is not in dire financial trouble, what money there is shared communally.
Even though everyone is sort of getting on very well in this society we've got, it's a bit too controlled, you know, because you suddenly, you want to go and do something and somebody says, oh, no, subsection B, clause A, you can't do that, you know. And you say, well, why not? Because, you know, I'm a human being and that, and haven't I got my rights? I say, well, yes, but you're not allowed to do that. And you say, well, you know, if it doesn't interfere with anyone, it must be okay. And they say, sorry, it still isn't, you know. So people have suddenly, I think a lot of people have twigged that this, they've shut themselves in a bit, you know. They've got all these rules for everything, rules of how to live, how to paint, how to make music. And it's just not true anymore, you know. They don't work, all those rules, because you can't apply them, because it means then that you're assuming that you know it all, you know, and the primitive man, us, and something else, you know, and we don't know it all yet. And so all of this gang of people from International Times, Indica, and the whole scene, you know, is trying to see where we are now and see what we've got around us, see any mistakes we've made, straighten them out. You know, it's just a straightforward endeavor kind of thing, you know, just to do something.
Yeah.
Other than what's been done before, because what's been done before isn't necessarily the answer. There could be another answer, you know.
One place where another answer has been attempted is the Roundhouse, a huge domed building which used to house a train turntable and now houses plays, parties, bizarre bazaars and light and sound shows. It's the Underground's experimental theatre, nightclub and marquee rolled into one.
The great thing is happening sort of all the way through, the great cleavage between the generations and their interests. The theatre is a very interesting example of this, in that you could say pretty safely that there's been absolutely nothing happening in the West End theatre in the last 3 or 4 years which is of any relevant interest to anyone who's under about 30 or so. In the search to try to make the arts stretch and change to fit in the demands of a new audience, the walls between the media have been breaking down, so that one day a poet finds out he needs to make a painting or something to complete a poem, or a painter discovers that his picture needs to have words coming out of it, or needs to make sounds when people touch it. And the theater begins to find out about computers and the fact that computers can write plays and computers can be plays, and the musicians discover the tape recorder, who in turn discovers the musician. And this is all moving towards a unity, which when we find it, that's when we'll need to start crystallizing things.
Throughout the scene, there is a deeply felt dissatisfaction with the theatre, both as a building and as a form. To them, it is an absurd situation to have special places for plays, plays where the audience is separated off arbitrarily from the action by the convention of the stage area. A happening, in their sense, is a play, just something going on within an environment, something which overrides the distinction between actors and audiences. This takes place, for example, in a bookshop basement. The scene from the People show is an intense self-mocking ritual in which the actors disembowel a man and dissect his dreams and achievements in a grotesque parody of a butcher's shop.
Is the stringy wish that none of you bastards ever let fly with?
This is the nightmare crotch that only opens to your hands when night comes down over your head like a warm hood.
This is the child your tongues won't buy and your aborted bodies go sour for.
This is the story of your lives.
These are the trophies, the shed skins, the old dreams, the left placentas of the little birds of vanity that young men think they can race across the roofs of the city like pigeons. These are the silly brave banners of all your lost causes, the Republican host of sexual wishes.
Floyd, once called the Underground's House Orchestra. On Friday nights, they and other groups play at UFO, UFO, Unidentified Flying Object, a nighttime environment where films, projection and music make the Underground's nightclub a huge entertainment scene. For the rest of the week, it is improbably an Irish dance hall. It's here that the Underground becomes most obviously a young people's movement. The only people over about 30 are reporters come to investigate what's going on. They're treated with amused tolerance by the people they're investigating. One of the aims here is to make music a felt experience, to make the patterns of light and sound merge and fuse deep inside each listener. The attempt has been called psychedelic, or mind-expanding. Psychedelic is a silly term, used by commentators as a blanket word to cover anything they don't fully understand. If this is psychedelic, then psychedelic music may be with us for some time. Many people claim it to be the next popular music, music as experience, not as melody. The underground movement in London is small as yet. Elsewhere, it has become a great force. Instant theatre, happenings, light and sound shows, psychedelic music are spreading. Today's underground may be the answer to tomorrow's leisure.
What they're saying and what they're doing is sort of nothing strange about it. It's just dead straight. But it's that they're talking about things that are a bit new, you know, and they're talking about things which people don't really know too much about yet. And so they tend to get, you know, people sort of put them down a bit and say, you know, weirdo, psychedelic and things. But it's really just what's going on around, and they're just trying to look into it a bit. So next time you see the word, you know, like sort of any word, any new strange word like psychedelic, you know, drugs, the whole bit, you know, freak out music and all of that, don't immediately take it as that, you know, because your first reaction's got to be one of fear, you know.
The fact that young people now have been through 2 wars and have been shipped all over the world and have been fighting in Europe, Americans fighting in Europe, Europeans fighting in Africa, all over the place. There's definitely this kind of new maturity and affluence. Young people have more money. They're not attached to a geographic location. They're not attached to family purse strings, and they're much more independent. And I think it is much more than just an arts revolution. It's a growing up. It's a maturing. I mean, youth feel that they can make a lot of decisions for themselves now that older people wanted to make for them before.
In London, it's still embryonic. The scene hasn't got very far at all. In Amsterdam, it's reached very large proportions. It's becoming a very big force there, and people are getting worried by it, the older generation. But of course, the answer they have is perfect. The young people are quite prepared to wait for the older generation to die off.
If you don't know anything about it, you can sort of trust that it's probably going to be all right. It's probably not that bad, because like it's human beings doing it, and you know vaguely what human beings do. And you know, they're probably going to think of it nearly the same way you would in that situation. And that's true, you know, you can trust to the fact that things are generally not as bad as you make them out to be.
It's.
So.
Far.
Out.
It's. Straight.
Down.